Oh, sweetheart, these are sugar-free. I made them special, just for you.
Dad, are you sure?
Of course I'm sure. People exaggerate these things all the time.
Karen, you know she's diabetic. Relax.
If she were really diabetic, one brownie wouldn't hurt her.
At our HOA block party, Karen, our HOA president, served my 14-year-old diabetic daughter sugar-free brownies that she'd secretly loaded with sugar. She knew about the diabetes. She'd been told multiple times. She wanted to prove my daughter was faking it. 20 minutes later, my daughter collapsed on our neighbor's lawn. Blood sugar over 400. Seizure risk. Potential coma. What Karen didn't know: I'm an ER doctor. I recognized the signs of intentional poisoning immediately. And I had evidence because Karen had made one critical mistake. Here's what happened, and how karma came for her in the most spectacular way possible. My name is Michael, and I've been an emergency room physician for 17 years. I've seen everything from heart attacks to drug overdoses, from car accidents to allergic reactions. You develop instincts in the UU, learn to read situations fast, trust your gut, and act decisively when seconds matter. My daughter Emma was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 9 years old. That's 5 years ago now. It wasn't easy at first teaching her to monitor her blood sugar, count carbohydrates, and calculate insulin doses. But Emma's incredibly responsible. She wears a continuous glucose monitor, carries her insulin and emergency glucagon everywhere, and she's never once been careless about her condition. We live in Maplewood Estates, one of those planned communities with winding streets, identical mailboxes, and an HOA that seems to have an opinion about everything: the grass height, the fence color, whether you can park your own car in your own driveway overnight. And running this HOA with an iron fist was Karen Mitchell. Karen was 58 years old, never married, had no kids, and the HOA was her entire life. She'd been president for 6 years, and in that time, she'd fined families for having the wrong shade of white trim, threatened lawsuits over backyard vegetable gardens, and once called animal control on a family because their dog barked during quiet hours, which she'd decided were 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., despite that not being in any official rules. Karen's problem with Emma started about 8 months before the block party. It was a Saturday morning, and Emma was playing basketball with some neighborhood kids in the cul-de-sac. Completely normal kid behavior. Emma's monitor alarmed, her blood sugar was dropping, so she sat down on the curb, pulled out her glucose tabs, and ate a few to bring her levels back up. Karen came storming over, as if Emma had spray-painted graffiti on someone's garage. "Excuse me, young lady, there's no eating in common areas. It's in the HOA bylaws, Section 7, Paragraph 3. I walked over, keeping my tone calm. "Karen, Emma has type 1 diabetes. She's treating low blood sugar. This is a medical necessity." Karen crossed her arms. "Well, she should go inside to do that. We have standards in this neighborhood." "She could pass out before making it inside," I explained. "When her blood sugar drops, she needs to treat it immediately, wherever she is. It's not optional." Karen's face pinched as she'd bitten into a lemon. "I'm sure it's not as serious as you're making it sound. Kids these days get diagnosed with everything. Back in my day, we didn't have all these special conditions." That's when I realized Karen was one of those people, the ones who think modern medicine is just everyone being dramatic. That type 1 diabetes is the same as eating too much candy. That kids with legitimate medical conditions are just getting attention or being coddled. Over the next few months, Karen's behavior escalated. She'd make comments when she saw Emma checking her blood sugar. "Oh, are we being dramatic today?" She complained to other neighbors that Emma got special treatment because we'd installed a small medical waste container on our porch for used insulin pen needles and test strips. She even sent us a formal HOA violation notice because Emma left her glucose monitor on our patio table overnight, claiming it was unsightly medical equipment in public view. Our patio, which you couldn't even see from the street. My wife, Jennifer, wanted to file a complaint of harassment, but I kept thinking Karen would eventually get bored and move on to tormenting someone else. I was wrong, because 3 weeks ago, Karen decided to prove that Emma was faking her diabetes, and her method, secretly poisoning my daughter at a neighborhood event where dozens of witnesses would watch Emma not react to sugar. Except Emma did react. A severe, dangerous, potentially deadly one. The Maplewood Estates annual summer block party is Karen's Super Bowl. She plans it for months, sends out color-coded schedules, assigns families specific dishes to bring, and patrols the event like a general inspecting troops. This year, Karen announced she'd be providing desserts herself. I want to ensure quality and presentation, she'd written in the HOA newsletter. Nobody argued. Most families were happy to have one less thing to prepare. The block party was on a Saturday in late July. The weather was perfect, 78 degrees, sunny, light breeze. Families set up in the community pavilion near the playground. There were grills going, kids running around, people playing cornhole and volleyball. Emma had checked her blood sugar before we left the house, 112 perfect. She'd calculated her insulin for the lunch she'd eat, had her supplies in her small crossbody bag, and was excited to hang out with her friends. Around 1:30, Karen started bringing out desserts, cookies, cupcakes, Rice Krispie treats, and several trays of brownies. She made a big show of setting up a dessert bar with little cards labeling everything. That's when I noticed something odd. One tray of brownies had a card that read sugar-free brownies in Karen's distinctive handwriting. She always used purple gel pen with unnecessary cursive flourishes. Jennifer saw it too. Did Karen make sugar-free brownies? Apparently, I said, surprised. Karen had never shown any awareness or accommodation of Emma's diabetes before. Maybe she was finally coming around. Emma and her friends came over to check out the desserts. Emma read the label, looked at the brownies, then looked at me with cautious hope. "Dad, can I have one of the sugar-free brownies?" I walked over to examine them. They looked like normal brownies, dark, fudgy, with what appeared to be some kind of sugar substitute visible on top. Those little crystalline granules you see on specialty baked goods. Karen appeared beside us, smiling that tight smile she always had. "The sugar-free brownies are the ones on the blue platter, Emma. I made them special. I used Splenda, almond flour, and sugar-free chocolate chips. Completely safe for diabetics." Something felt off. Karen's tone was too sweet, too eager. In 8 months of making Emma's life difficult, she'd never once shown an ounce of accommodation or understanding. "That's very thoughtful, Karen," Jennifer said carefully. "What recipe did you use?" "Oh, I found it on Pinterest," Karen said quickly. "One of those diabetes-friendly blogs. I wanted Emma to be included." Emma was looking at the brownies with such hope. She'd been left out of desserts at every HOA event for nearly a year. The other kids would be eating cookies and cake, and Emma would have the sugar-free protein bar we'd packed for her. I wanted to let her have this moment. I wanted to believe Karen had actually done something kind, but my ER instincts were screaming. "Karen, would you mind if I took a picture of the recipe?" I asked. "Emma loves brownies, and if these work well, we'd love to make them at home." Karen's smile flickered. Just for a second. "Oh, I don't have it with me. It's at home on my computer. I can email it to you later." "Which blog was it from?" Jennifer pressed. "I don't remember the name," Karen said, voice getting slightly sharp. "Does it matter? They're sugar-free. Emma can have one." That's when I knew something was wrong, because someone who'd gone to the trouble of baking special brownies for a diabetic kid would remember the blog, would have the recipe ready to share, and would want to discuss the substitutions they'd used. Karen wasn't being kind. She was setting a trap. I was about to tell Emma not to eat the brownie, but I hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if Karen really had made an effort, and I had insulted her in front of the entire neighborhood? What if I made Emma feel like she could never trust anything at social events? Jennifer caught my eye. She sensed it too. "You know what, Em?" I said. "Why don't we have you check your blood sugar first, just to make sure you're at a good level for a treat?" Emma pulled out her monitor. "Dad, it's fine. It was 112 like 20 minutes ago. I know, honey. Just humor your paranoid Dr. Father. She rolled her eyes but checked. 118. Excellent. See, perfect, Emma said. Karen was watching us with an expression I'd learned to recognize in the other look of someone waiting for their plan to work. Tell you what, I said, making a split-second decision. Emma, why don't you take one of those brownies, and we'll save it for after dinner tonight. That way we can monitor your levels closely when you eat it, just to be safe with a new recipe. Emma's face fell. Dad, that's not fair. Everyone else gets to eat dessert now. I know, sweetheart. But we're always extra careful with new foods, remember? Especially ones we haven't calculated carbs for. Karen stepped forward. For heaven's sake, Michael, they're sugar-free. She can eat it now, unless you don't trust me. Her voice carried across the pavilion. Other families were starting to look over. She was backing me into a corner. If I refused, I'd look like the paranoid, overprotective parent who wouldn't let his daughter have a simple brownie. If I let Emma eat it, and I was right about my suspicions. Karen, I appreciate you making these, I said evenly. But Emma's doctor has asked us to test all new foods at home first, where we have her full medical kit. It's just protocol, nothing personal. That's ridiculous, Karen snapped. It's a brownie, not chemotherapy. Several neighbors were definitely watching now. I saw Tom and Linda Chen exchanging glances. The Rodriguez family had stopped their volleyball game. Emma looked mortified. Her friends were staring. Nothing says you're different to a 14-year-old like your dad making a scene over food. Dad, please, Emma whispered. It's fine. I'll just have a small piece. And that's when Karen made her fatal mistake. She picked up one of the sugar-free brownies, broke off a small piece, and held it out to Emma with a triumphant smile. Here, a small piece won't hurt anything, unless you don't actually need to avoid sugar. The implication hung in the air. She was suggesting Emma was faking her diabetes. Jennifer's face went white with fury. I put a hand on her arm. Emma, I said quietly, you can make your own choice, but I'm asking you, as your father and as a doctor, to wait until we're home. Emma looked at me, at Karen, at her friends, at the brownie. Then she took a breath and said, Okay, Dad, we'll wait. Karen's expression soured instantly. Fine, be that way, but don't come crying to me when Emma feels left out at every event because you won't let her participate normally. She walked away, leaving the tray of brownies on the table. I wrapped one of the sugar-free brownies in a napkin and put it in my pocket, because if I was right about what Karen had done, I was going to need evidence. And if I was wrong, I'd owe her an apology, and Emma could have her brownie at home. But something told me I wasn't wrong. We stayed at the block party for another hour. Emma hung out with her friends. We ate regular food. Everything seemed fine. But I kept watching Karen, and Karen kept watching Emma, with this strange, disappointed expression. Around 3 o'clock, we headed home. Emma went upstairs to her room, still annoyed with me for making things weird at the party. I went into the kitchen and unwrapped the brownie. Jennifer joined me. You really think she did something? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I broke off a small piece of the brownie and touched it to my tongue. Immediately, I tasted it. Sweet, very sweet. Not the subtle sweetness of Splenda or the slightly strange aftertaste of stevia. Regular sugar, a lot of it. Taste this, I said, handing Jennifer a crumb. She did. Her eyes widened. That's regular sugar. That's not just regular sugar, I said, examining the brownie more closely. Look at these crystals on top. Karen said they were from sugar substitute, but these are coarse sugar crystals. The kind you put on cookies to make them sparkly. And the texture this is made with regular flour, regular sugar, regular everything. I got out a glucose test strip, the kind diabetics use to test their blood. But you can also use them to test food for glucose content. I dissolved a small piece of the brownie in water and dipped the strip. The strip turned dark purple almost immediately. High glucose content, very high. She lied, Jennifer said, her voice shaking with anger. She deliberately lied about what was in those brownies. She was trying to get Emma to eat them. She was trying to prove Emma doesn't really have diabetes, I said. She wanted Emma to eat sugar and not have a reaction, so she could tell everyone we're making it up. But Emma would have had a reaction, Jennifer said. Her blood sugar would have spiked. She could have gotten seriously sick. That's exactly what Karen was counting on, not happening, I said. Because Karen doesn't understand type 1 diabetes. She thinks it's like type 2, where some people can sometimes eat a little sugar. She doesn't understand that for Emma, unaccounted for sugar could put her in the hospital. We stood there, staring at the brownie, trying to process what Karen had almost done. We need to report this, Jennifer said. This is criminal. She tried to poison our daughter. I know, I said. But we need to be strategic. Karen's been the HOA president for 6 years. She's got allies. If we accuse her without ironclad proof, she twists it around and make us look like the problem. You have the brownie, Jennifer pointed out. I have a brownie she left at a public event, I said. She could claim she mislabeled it by accident, or that someone else switched the trays. We need more. I thought about it, turning the problem over in my mind, the way I do with complex cases in the ER. What did we need? Proof of intent. Proof that Karen knew what she was doing and did it deliberately. The recipe, I said suddenly. Karen said she'd email us the recipe. If we ask her for it, one of 3 things will happen. She'll send a fake recipe, she'll send nothing, or she'll send the real recipe and pretend she made a mistake. Any of those options proves she lied, Jennifer said. Exactly, but we need to document everything. Timestamps, communications, everything. I pulled out my phone and emailed Karen. Hi Karen. Thanks again for making those sugar-free brownies for Emma. We tried the one we brought home, and Emma really enjoyed it. Could you send me that recipe? We'd love to make them ourselves. Thanks, Michael. I pressed send. Jennifer looked at me. You just lied to her. I told her we tried the brownie, I said. I didn't say Emma ate it. We did try it too, and I tasted it. And now we wait. We didn't have to wait long, because the next morning at 7 a.m., I woke up to an email from Karen, and when I read it, I knew we had her. The email she sent wasn't a recipe. It was something much more damning. Karen's email read, Michael, I'm glad Emma finally ate one of those brownies without incident. I was beginning to think you and Jennifer were exaggerating her condition for attention. Perhaps she's outgrowing her diabetes, or perhaps the doctors were wrong. Either way, I hope this puts your mind at ease, and you'll stop making such a fuss at neighborhood events. No recipe to Shirai. Got rid of it. Regards, Karen. I read it 3 times. Jennifer read it over my shoulder. Oh my God. She just confessed. She didn't just confess, I said. She revealed her entire plan. She thought Emma ate the brownie. She was expecting Emma not to have a reaction, because she doesn't understand how diabetes works, and she was gloating about it. She got rid of the recipe, because there is no recipe, Jennifer said, because they weren't sugar-free. She can't produce it, because it doesn't exist. I forwarded the email to my personal account, took screenshots, and saved it in 3 different places. Then, I sat back and considered our options. Karen had attempted to poison our daughter. That was the plain fact. She'd deliberately misrepresented food she knew Emma would trust, with the intent to prove that Emma's medical condition wasn't real. In the medical community, we see this sometimes. Family members who don't believe in mental health conditions. People who think allergies are mind over matter. Individuals who sneak peanuts into food to prove someone's allergy is fake. It's dangerous. It's abuse. And sometimes, it's deadly. Karen had gambled with my daughter's life because she valued being right more than she valued a child's safety. That Monday, I called our family attorney, Rebecca Choi. I'd worked with her on medical malpractice consultations before. I'd been an expert witness in a few cases where she needed someone to explain ER procedures to juries. I laid out everything. Karen's history of harassment, the brownies at the block party, my testing of the brownie, and Karen's email. Rebecca was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Michael, what Karen did could be classified as assault, potentially even attempted poisoning. Knowingly giving a diabetic person food you've deliberately mislabeled in a way that could cause them severe harm. That's textbook assault. Can we prove intent? I asked. Her email is strong evidence of intent, Rebecca said. She admits she was testing Emma's condition. She was hoping for a specific outcome. She lied about the ingredients, and she's now trying to convince you that Emma's diagnosis isn't real. That's not an accident. That's deliberate action with malicious intent. What do we do? I asked. First, we report this to the police, Rebecca said. File a formal complaint. They may or may not choose to investigate, but we need the record. Second, we sent a cease and desist letter to Karen, documenting the harassment and demanding she stop all contact with Emma. Third, we notify the HOA board, not just Karen, but the other board members about what happened. Karen's going to deny everything, I said. She's already admitted it in writing, Rebecca pointed out. And you have physical evidence of the brownies containing sugar. She can deny all she wants, but the facts speak for themselves. That afternoon, Jennifer and I went to the police station and filed a report. The officer who took our statement was a woman named Detective Sarah Brennan, and as we explained what happened, her expression went from skeptical to disturbed. Let me get this straight, she said. Your HOA president deliberately gave your diabetic daughter mislabeled food to prove that she doesn't have diabetes. That's correct, I said. And here's the email where she admits it. I showed her my phone. Detective Brennan read the email, then looked up at me. Do you still have the brownie? I do. It's been in a sealed container in my refrigerator. We're going to need that, she said. We'll send it to the lab, test for glucose content, and get a formal analysis. And I'd like to talk to your daughter, with your permission. Emma gave her statement that evening. She explained her diabetes, the incident at the block party, and how she'd felt pressured to eat the brownie, but ultimately didn't because I asked her to wait. What would have happened if you'd eaten it? Detective Brennan asked gently. Emma thought about it. My blood sugar would have gone really high. I'd probably feel sick, dizzy, nauseous, really thirsty. If it got high enough, and stayed high, I could go into DKA, diabetic ketoacidosis. That's when your blood gets too acidic. People can go into comas from that. People die. Detective Brennan wrote everything down. When we finished, she said, I'm going to be honest with you. Cases like this are difficult to prosecute because they require proving intent. But between the physical evidence and that email, you have a stronger case than most. I'll do everything I can, but the real justice, that didn't come from the police. It came from somewhere Karen never expected, and it destroyed everything she'd built. The HOA board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday evening. Normally, maybe 10 people show up to these things, board members, and the occasional homeowner with a complaint about someone's lawn gnome. This meeting had 53 people. Word had spread through the neighborhood. Not from us, we'd been careful not to gossip. But Karen had apparently been bragging to her allies about finally proving that Emma was faking her diabetes, and those people had told other people, and the whole neighborhood was buzzing with the news. The meeting was in the community center. Jennifer, Emma, and I sat in the back row. Rebecca Choi sat with us, legal pad at the ready. Karen called the meeting to order, looking pleased with the turnout. It's wonderful to see so many engaged community members here tonight. Tom Chen stood up. Tom was an engineer for Boeing, a quiet guy who generally stayed out of HOA drama. Karen, before we start with regular business, I'd like to make a motion that we discuss your conduct at the block party. Karen's smile froze. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean the brownies you served Emma Harrison while claiming they were sugar-free when they weren't, Tom said. Several of us witnessed it, and we'd like an explanation. The room erupted. Multiple people started talking at once. Karen banged her gavel. This is not on the agenda. I'm making a motion to add it to the agenda, Tom said. Do I have a second? Seconded, said at least 5 different voices. Karen looked around wildly. The other board members, Mark Sullivan and Patricia Davis, looked uncomfortable. They clearly hadn't expected this. Fine, Karen said tightly. You want to discuss the block party? Fine. I made sugar-free brownies to include Emma in the dessert. I used every appropriate substitution. If there was any confusion, it was an honest mistake. Karen, you told my husband you were trying to prove Emma was faking her diabetes, Linda Chen said, standing up. I heard you say it myself. Karen's face flushed. I said no such thing. You told Debbie Martinez that Emma's parents were exaggerating her condition for attention, someone else called out. You said kids, these days are diagnosed with everything, and it's all for sympathy, another voice added. Karen was losing control of the room. She pointed at me. Dr. Harrison is the one who made a scene. He refused to let Emma eat a perfectly safe brownie because he doesn't trust anyone but himself. Karen, I said, standing up. My voice carried across the room. A training helps with projection. I'd like to submit something to the board. I walked to the front and handed a folder to Mark Sullivan. This contains the lab report from the police forensics lab testing. The brownie you gave Emma. It shows a glucose content of 42 grams and a single serving equivalent to 10 teaspoons of regular sugar. It also contains your email to me where you admitted you expected Emma to eat the brownie without having a reaction, which reveals you knew she hadn't eaten it at the party and were planning to use that as evidence her diabetes isn't real. The room went dead silent. Mark opened the folder. Patricia leaned over to read it with him. Their expressions changed from confusion to shock to horror. Karen, Mark said slowly, is this true? Did you deliberately give Emma food you knew contained sugar while telling her and her family it was sugar-free? I made an honest mistake, Karen started. Your email says otherwise, Patricia cut in. She was reading the printed copy of Karen's email. You said you were glad Emma finally ate one without incident, and that you hoped it would put their minds at ease. Karen, that's not the language of someone who made a mistake. That's someone who was conducting an experiment. With my daughter's health, Jennifer added, her voice shaking. She could have gone into a diabetic coma. It's not that serious, Karen protested. Yes, it is, I said. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition where the body doesn't produce insulin. Without insulin, blood sugar rises to dangerous levels. High blood sugar causes damage to blood vessels, nerves, and organs. In acute cases, it causes diabetic ketoacidosis, which is deadly. What you did could have killed my daughter. Emma stood up. At 14, my daughter is brave, braver than I was at her age. Mrs. Mitchell, I check my blood sugar 10 times a day. I give myself insulin shots before every meal and at bedtime. I've had to leave class to treat low blood sugar. I've had to go to the hospital twice in the last year for adjustments to my insulin pump. This isn't fake. This isn't for attention. This is my life. Every single day. Her voice cracked on the last word. Jennifer put an arm around her. Karen looked around the room, seeing the expressions of disgust and anger on her neighbors' faces. People she'd commanded for 6 years. People who'd followed her rules and tolerated her complaints and paid her fines. You're all overreacting, Karen said, but her voice had lost its authority. I was trying to help by poisoning a child. Someone shouted, by proving she's faking. Karen snapped back. And there it was, the admission, in front of 50 witnesses. Mark Sullivan stood up. Karen Mitchell, as treasurer of this HOA board, I'm making a motion for your immediate removal as president on grounds of gross misconduct and endangerment of a community member. Seconded, Patricia said instantly. All in favor? Mark asked. Every hand in the room went up, except Karen's. Motion passes, Mark said. Karen, effective immediately. You're removed from the board. We'll be conducting a full review of your tenure as president, and I suspect we'll find other issues that need addressing. Karen looked around the room like she couldn't believe what was happening. You can't do this to me. I've dedicated 6 years. You tried to poison a kid to prove a point, Tom Chen said flatly. Yes, we can do this. And we should have done it years ago. But it wasn't over. Because 3 days later, When the police finished their investigation, Karen got a visit she definitely wasn't expecting. And the charges, they carried serious time. Detective Brennan called me on Sunday afternoon. "Dr. Harrison, I wanted to let you know we're moving forward with charges against Karen Mitchell." "What charges?" I asked. "Assault with the intent to cause bodily harm," she said. The district attorney reviewed the evidence, the lab report on the brownies, her email admission, witness statements from the block party and HOA meeting, and decided there's enough for prosecution. "What does that mean for Karen?" I asked. "If convicted, she's looking at up to 5 years, though realistically it'll probably be less. There'll also be fines, possible restitution, and she'll likely have to complete community service and anger management. This goes on her record permanently." I thanked Detective Brennan and hung up. Jennifer had been listening to the speaker. 5 years, she said quietly. "For a brownie. For deliberately trying to harm a child," I corrected. That's what this was. She knew what she was doing. She wanted to prove she was right more than she wanted to keep Emma safe. The story spread beyond our neighborhood. A local news station picked it up. HOA president charged with assault after allegedly poisoning diabetic teen. Then, a regional station. Then, one of those viral TikTok accounts that shares news stories. And suddenly, we were getting messages from people across the country. Dozens of people wrote to tell us similar stories. Parents whose children had allergies and had been given allergen-containing food by people testing if the allergy was real. Diabetics who'd been given regular soda instead of diet to see what would happen. Celiacs who'd been fed gluten by people who thought celiac disease was a fad. The common thread. People who valued being right over other people's safety. People who thought they knew better than doctors. People who saw medical conditions as personal challenges to their worldview. Karen pleaded not guilty, of course. Her lawyer tried to argue she'd made an honest mistake, that she'd accidentally used the wrong recipe, that she'd never intended harm. But the evidence was overwhelming. The lab report, the email, Emma's testimony, the witness statements from neighbors Karen had told them about her plan. The trial lasted 3 days. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Karen was sentenced to 2 years in prison, sentenced to 18 months with good behavior plus 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and a permanent restraining order, keeping her at least 500 feet from Emma. She was also ordered to pay restitution for our legal fees and Emma's medical monitoring costs in the aftermath of the incident. At sentencing, the judge said something I'll never forget. "Ms. Mitchell, you decided that your personal beliefs about a child's medical condition were more important than that child's safety. You decided that you, with no medical training, knew better than doctors, better than parents, better than the child herself. Your arrogance could have killed someone. And for what? To prove a point. To be right. That is not just criminal. It is morally unconscionable." The HOA underwent major changes after Karen's removal. Mark Sullivan became interim president and immediately started reviewing her decisions. Turns out Karen had been running the HOA like her personal fiefdom for years. She'd issued over 300 violation notices in 6 years, most of them for things that weren't actually violations according to the bylaws. She'd collected thousands of dollars in fines that had gone into an account only she controlled. She'd threatened families with legal action to get her way, even when she had no legal standing. The board refunded improper fines, apologized to families Karen had harassed, and rewrote the bylaws to prevent any one person from having that much unilateral power again. They also added new provisions specifically protecting residents with medical conditions and disabilities from discrimination. Tom Chen was elected as the new president in October. His first act, officially apologizing to Emma on behalf of the HOA and presenting her with a certificate declaring her a valued and respected member of the Maplewood Estates community. Emma hung it in her room, right next to her diabetes awareness posters. The hardest part of all of this was watching Emma process what happened. She's 14. She shouldn't have to think about adults trying to hurt her. She shouldn't have to defend the reality of her medical condition to people who are supposed to be in positions of authority and trust. About a month after the trial, Emma came to me while I was in the home office working on patient charts. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Why did Mrs. Mitchell do it?" Emma asked. "I mean, I know she didn't believe I had diabetes, but why did that matter so much to her? Why did she have to prove it?" I put down my pen and turned to face her fully. "I've been thinking about that a lot, I think. Some people build their entire identity around being right, being the person who sees through things, who knows better than everyone else. For Karen, your diabetes challenged that identity. She'd decided modern kids are overdiagnosed, and you were evidence that contradicted her belief. Instead of changing her belief, she tried to change the evidence." "But that's crazy," Emma said. "Yeah, I agreed. It is, and it's dangerous. Some of the most harmful things people do come from being certain they're right when they're absolutely wrong." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm glad you didn't let me eat that brownie." I pulled her into a hug. "Me too, kiddo, me too." Karen served her full 18 months. She's out now, living 2 towns over, subject to the restraining order that keeps her away from our neighborhood and our family. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she tells people she's the victim in all of this, that she was persecuted for questioning medical authority, that the HOA board staged a coup because they were jealous of her leadership. Some people never learn, but most people do. After Karen's arrest made the news, I got contacted by 3 different hospitals, asking if I'd be willing to consult on training programs about medical child abuse and medical gaslighting. I've given talks to pediatric departments about recognizing when caregivers don't believe children's medical diagnoses and what warning signs to look for. Emma's doing great. Her diabetes management is excellent. Her last A1C was 6.2, which is well within the target range. She's on the school volleyball team. She's got good friends. And she's learned to advocate for herself in ways I'm incredibly proud of. She still carries glucose tabs in her pocket. She still checks her blood sugar multiple times a day. She still has to think about carbs and insulin and all the invisible work that goes into managing type 1 diabetes. But now, at least, she knows that most people in her community support her, believe her, and would never dream of testing whether her medical condition is real. As for me, I learned something important through all of this. Trust your instincts. That feeling I had at the block party, that something was wrong, that Karen was lying, I almost ignored it because I didn't want to make a scene. I almost let social pressure override medical knowledge and parental intuition. I'm an ER doctor. I've been trained to recognize when something isn't right, to trust my assessment even when it goes against what I'm being told. I should have trusted that training from the beginning. Because sometimes, the person offering you a brownie at a block party isn't being kind. Sometimes, they're testing a theory. And sometimes, that test could cost someone their life. Merry Christmas to everyone out there. Hold your loved ones close. Trust your instincts. And if someone ever tells you they don't believe your medical condition is real, remember Emma's story. And remember that you don't have to prove anything to people who've already decided not to believe you. Stay safe out there.